Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa Parajikacharya Astotra to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai O Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Astotra to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. The Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now, I am not quite sure where we are.
I think it's 3.6.
6. Okay, thank you. Page 143. Most of your books. There's one book that's an outlier. So you have to be careful. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of April 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Dravida Swami Prabhupada. And we are reading from the 3rd chapter, Karma Yoga, text number 6 at the bottom of page 143. Excuse me. Karmendriyani Sangyamya Ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vamudhatma mityachara sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vamudhatma mityacharak sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mityacharak sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mityacharak sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mityacharak sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mityacharak sauchyate karmendriyani sangyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mityacharat sauchyate. Anyone else want to try? Anyone in Zoom land want to try?
Karmendriyani samyamya
Karmendriyani sangyamya
ya aste manasasmaran
ya aste manasasmaran
indriyarthan vimudhatma
indriyarthan vimudhatma
mityacharak sauchyate
mityacharak sauchyate. Karma indriyani, the 5 working sense organs. Sangyamya, controlling. Yaha, anyone who. Aste, remains. Manasa, by the mind. Smaran, thinking of. Indriya arthan, sense objects. Vimudha, foolish. Atma, soul. Mithya acharaha, pretender. Saha, he. Uchyate is called. Translation. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Purport. Okay. We're on page 144. Do you want a book? We have books. Yeah, there you go. All right, I'll read that again. Oh no, I'll read the purport. Purport. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, this chapter is called Karma Yoga, and actually by the name of the chapter, it has to do with action. How do we act in such a way that we cannot deepen our entanglement in this world, and that at the same time we can get free from previous entanglements? The philosophy is that each of us has been in this world for a long time, in different bodies, some of them human, some of them not human. So many lifetimes of Brahma, we don't know how many millions of years and billions of years we've been here. And in all of those bodies, without Krishna consciousness, we've been acting fruitively. Now that actually only pertains to human bodies, because animals and lower beings, insects and things, they're not responsible. They don't incur karma. One has to have the intelligence to be responsible, to know the difference between right and wrong, to be responsible for one's works, to have karma, either good or bad. So these lower forms, they're just burning off karma from previous life. If you're very sinful, you'll lose the human form of life. You go down into one of the lower forms, and then gradually you come up the forms until you come again to the human form. And all those times, the different bodies you're in, you get gradually burning off your karma. So this is the situation. Now, in the human form of life, we have the chance to act in such a way that we're not incurring any more karma. It's called karma yoga. And as Krishna will make clear in a few verses, the essence of that is to, whatever we're doing, to be doing as a sacrifice for Vishnu, a sacrifice for Krishna. Yagyartat kamanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu or Krishna, otherwise the work binds one to this world. Even if it's so-called good work, you may be performing sacrifice to different gods in order to go to the heavenly planets. But if your motive is selfish in some kind of way, or even extended selfishness, means the family, the community, the nation, even all of humanity, that's still fruitive work, unless it's sacrificed for Krishna directly, for his pleasure. And so that will bind one in this world. Even if you get good karma, you're still bound. If you want to go to Indraloka, Krishna explains right in the 9th chapter, you can drink the Somaras, perform so many sacrifices, and if you do it all right, you can go up to the heavenly planets. Tetam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam. And in that realm, you can enjoy godly delights for a long, long time. But then, chine punye, when you're, it's just like money in the bank. When you do all these sacrifices, and then you get punya. And that it's maybe so much punya, it takes you to the heavenly planets. But then you start spending it. Then you're enjoying, And so eventually the punya chine, your punya runs out. And martya lokam vishandi. You have to return to this world of death, martya loka. So therefore, evam tahit dhamma anupapanna gadakatam kama kama labante. But this process is just going and coming. You're not actually progressing toward the goal, which is back home, back to Godhead, free from all designations, all karma, and back in our original position of pure devotees of Krishna. So karma yoga is important because it's practical. It means that you have a right to act, just like Krishna said in the second chapter. What is it? I forget the Sanskrit now, but he says you have a right to perform your activity, but don't consider yourself the doer of activities. Don't try to enjoy the fruit, and don't be attached to not doing your duty. He covers all the bases there. Because one might say, I can't even enjoy the fruit, and I can't even be proud that I did nice work. Why should I work at all? I'm not going to work. And don't be attached to not doing your duty. So the only way you can be happy working like that is if you're developing your actual bhakti for Krishna, and you're satisfied in a deep spiritual way by sacrificing for Krishna, working for Krishna, because your pleasure is in the pleasure of Krishna. By making him happy, you're becoming much more happy than you would be trying to enjoy your senses, which is very temporary. So that's the key. And karma yoga ultimately is explained as an element of bhakti yoga. It's not a substitute. It's a way of looking at it, because we have to act. What does Krishna say in text 4? No, he said in the previous verse, Nahi kaschit chanamapi. This is text 5. Jatu kaschit tishtati karmakrit. You can never not do anything. Even if you're sitting very quietly, meditating, your mind is working, right? You have to bring it back. You're working on your mind. So the soul is always active somehow. It may not be so obvious, but the soul is active. How to act in such a way that there's no reaction. That's called naishkarmya. So Krishna says in the nakarmanam manarambad naishkarmyam purushoshnate. You're not going to enjoy the result of naishkarmya by not doing anything. And next verse he says, you can't not do anything. You have to do something. So the art and science of bhakti is what to do with your active senses, your knowledge-acquiring senses, your mind and your intelligence, which is all of our facilities, so that you stay connected to Krishna and the purification process goes on. What are you being purified from? Food of desire. Desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. It's unnatural. It's unnatural. It keeps us, it's the source of suffering. In the morning, we've been reading this hair-raising chapter, describing this world as the forest of enjoyment. Really, it means the forest of suffering. And so many different ways in which we suffer in this world are being described. And that's just the nature of it. Just the nature of it. Just if you don't do anything and you lead a very clean, pure life and you don't hurt anybody, still, old age comes, disease comes, the pandemic comes. It's just a world of suffering. So how to get out of that is to understand, learn how to live in this world and act in this world, so you're becoming freer by the day. And here Krishna, he condemns those who fake it. They try to, he restrains the actions of senses of action, but mind dwells on sense objects, certainly does what's called a pretender. You can't do that for very long. It becomes obvious. Just like the bogus yogis that come to America, and they have the look of the yogi, the talk of the yogi, but actually they're not enjoying the bhakti rasa. This is essential. If you're going to be detached, really, from the allurements of Maya, and they're going to come, then you need to be tasting bhakti rasa. This is explained in the 4th canto, the teachings to Prithu of the 4 Kumaras. Yat para pankaja palasa bilasa bhaktya karmashayam guditam udgutayanti santa tadbanna riktamatayo yatayopi ruddha sroto ganastamadanam bhaja vasudevam. That last phrase, maybe you can understand. Worship Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. So what is he saying there? Those who are enjoying moment to moment the vilas, the spiritual pleasure of serving the feet of Krishna. Actually, the toes of the lotus feet. Karmashayam guditam udgatayanti santa. The santas, the saints, the devotees. Karmashaya means your hopes, your aspirations for fruit of results. Well, let me get this money so I can buy this, I can enjoy this, I can go there. This is karmashaya. It changes as you grow up. I remember when I was a boy. I was about maybe 8 years old, and all my friends had bicycles. And my most ardent desire in this world was to get a bicycle. My parents bought me a bicycle. Oh, I was flying around like And then after 1-2 years, gradually the bicycle. I get into school and do all. And the bicycles started to spend more and more time in the basement. We had it in an apartment. And gradually, I didn't use it at all anymore. I think they sold it for $25 or something. So there was a period there where that was my ardent desire. I got my desire fulfilled. I was happy. I was blissful. But then you change. You grow older. So this is material life. From one set of desires to another, according to your age, according to your situation, all kinds of things. But it never ends. And you can never be truly fulfilled. You may get the desire, but it doesn't, turn out to be exactly what you hoped. And you change, it changes. It's always change. Asat. You can never be happy in this asat world. It's Maya's trick. So there were so many pretenders who, because you can be honored. Oh, he's very austere, very detached, you know. But inside, he's thinking, oh, by this detachment, I'll go to America. I'll be a yogi, you know, and then I'll get so much money. It happens. So this is simply mityachara, pretender. So we should be honest. We're not cheating anybody. You try to pretend to be something you're not spiritually, you're just cheating yourself. Krishna knows. He knows everything. He's inside. So honestly, being honest to ourselves and to others is a very great prerequisite. Okay, any questions on that verse? Yes, okay. Oh, we have 3. Okay, go ahead.
The sentence before the last one says that this sinful man's knowledge is taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. I'm just trying to understand, what does it mean, taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord? That he just runs out of the pious punya?
Well, no. There's a verse. What is it? Kamais taistai riddha papudyante anya devata. That kamais taistai, the various desires, riddha jnana, it takes away the knowledge. Papudyante anya devata, for those who surrender to other devas. In other words, you're not worshipping Krishna, but you're worshipping Indra, so that you can go to Indraloka. Very enticing, so many descriptions, even in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is how our knowledge is stolen away, or sometimes it's said covered. In the 3rd chapter, at the end of this chapter, we'll read the verse, Avritam jnanametina jnanino nityavidina. It's talking about lust, kama. Avritam means covered, jnanametina. How does it work? We can experience it. You know, even in our neophyte stage of devotional service, sometimes there may be some desire for something. We want to see a movie or something, you know. Okay, we yield to that, you know. I chanted my rounds, you know. I'm not stopping my rounds. I'm chanting, you know, but I want to see, like, I was told this is a very spiritual movie, you know. So you see the movie, and while you're watching the movie, you're forgetting all about Krishna. Your knowledge is not acting, you know, and if you keep doing that, you'll forget all about Krishna consciousness. All the verses you learned, all the science, everything. That's how Maya works. Is you want to forget Krishna so that you can try to enjoy and be like Krishna. And so she fulfills that desire, covers your knowledge. So now our higher intelligence has awoken. Remember that verse. And we know that we want to get back to serving Krishna. So we want to increase our knowledge by hearing Bhagavad Gita, practicing Bhagavad Gita, because otherwise if we don't practice it, the knowledge will go, you know. So that's what it means, that the effects of such sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusion of the Lord, such in his mind. So in other words, we can't pretend to be great devotees and think that we can do that for very long, because Krishna is inside. And we have to remember that whatever platform we're on of interest in Krishna consciousness is all bestowed upon us by Krishna, because he sees some sincerity. That's why when you chant, there's some pleasure there. Maybe not pure bhakti is demolishing, but it's some pleasure that you want to keep chanting and chanting. You know, you should, even when it's a little dry, Hare Krishna, you know. In other words, Krishna's encouraging you. He's giving you the will. He's giving you the interest to keep doing it. But if you try to cheat, then you'll lose that. You know, so what's the point? You know, let me go out and enjoy. And you're completely covered. That's how it works. So it's a very cogent comment Prabhupada makes here. All right, let's go on. Wait a minute, we have more. Go ahead.
Prabhuji, when you were talking about when you were talking about the pleasure that comes from chanting Hare Krishna, we are at the conditioned state and we are aspiring for Raganuga Bhakti. And I see this concept of a pretender as a Vaidhi sadhaka trying to imitate a Raganuga Bhakta, and like not being able to taste ending up becoming a pretender. So we are not at this phase of Raganuga where we can feel the spontaneous love, And at the same time, at Vaidhi Sadhaka, we are following rules and regulations, but we see them as rules and regulations. So the pleasure is limited. So in this process of gradually purifying ourselves, what is the source of pleasure for us if we are not tasting that spontaneous pleasure? And we cannot, and if we imitate that spontaneous pleasure, we end up,
I'm not so sure that you're right about that. A pretender is someone not whose mind, goes. You're chanting Hare Krishna and your mind goes to something that's non-Krishna, and you bring it back, and that it may go to something you experienced 10 years ago that was very pleasurable, and you say no, and you keep chanting. That's part of sadhana, is bringing the mind back from that. But a pretender is someone who's intentionally, in other words, he's got a plan. He's going to, play the game. I'm sitting. The pretender is you can find that in bhakti circles also. But the thing is, it becomes pretty obvious after a while, pretty quickly. Whereas if you're trying to Ashtanga yoga, it's I think easier to pretend. All you have to do is be able to do full lotus posture. I mean, I used to go, that's it. Oh my goodness. How can I serve you? Like that. I before I came to Krishna consciousness, I had some experience with that. And sometimes the people, they're neophytes, they're obviously neophytes, but they're dressing up, but the real serious pretenders are the leaders of the group. They're not preaching bhakti. They're preaching some other kind of yoga that has some elements here. You can read the Bhagavad Gita. We should sit like this. We could breathe like this, like that. But they're not really aspiring to become bhaktas. And so they're cheating their followers. And that's the real pretenders, the dangerous ones. But the devotees who are aspiring to advance in devotional service, yes, there are those who pretend. You have the Sahajiya sect and so forth, that's for sure. So they'll fail, and he deludes himself. They're not really going to advance. It's a self-delusion as well as trying to delude the public. So you're not going anywhere with that. But there's two classes there. One is doing it is the classic yogis, and the bhaktas who do it. We also have the upper sambhradayas and so forth. So that's we should watch out for that. But as long as we're in the realm of Srila Prabhupada's books and his community and so forth, then we can endeavor to be honest with ourselves and honest with others, and advance at the rate that we're actually going. I think that your premise is wrong about the pretenders. Pretenders is someone who's intentionally, he's not trying to advance.
Yes, Prabhuji. Actually, my question wasn't much about the pretenders. It was that for those who are practicing bhakti with rules and regulations, there is limited pleasure because we are still doing it at the platform of rules and regulations, because we have material conditionings. But those who are spontaneously practicing it, they are feeling spontaneous love.
Yes.
And we are aspiring for that spontaneous love. So while we are making the journey to Raganuga, what is our source of pleasure? Like while we are in the Vaidhi Sadhaka platform, when we are just doing bhakti by rules and regulations, what is our source of pleasure other than the practice itself? Because it feels like a jerking car, like the car moves a little and stops. It stops. It's very irritating.
The source of pleasure is Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure. The thing is that, for instance, in Ratha Yatra is coming up. Our little Ratha Yatra here, and hopefully LA Ratha Yatra, which is big. In the beginning of August. I don't know if you've ever been there. So this gives a chance for all of us to do extra service, to have many, nice kirtans, to serve Jagannath. It's undeniable that there's a certain pleasure there. It may not be sthai bhava, but it's definitely a certain amount of transcendental pleasure that comes. How can you tell that it's there? Well, you're feeling it, but you're also feeling detached. You're not tempted. You're not bothered at that moment, or that when you're intensely in front of Jagannath chanting Jai Jagannath Hare Krishna for hours, on the procession, and then the whole thing, and then it's preaching, and you have an experience of I don't want to say Krishna high, but spiritual pleasure. It's not, the tears may not be flowing and the hair standing on end, but there's still a pleasure. It's a gradation. It's a gradation. And this is why the movement is spread all over the world, because anyone who takes the trouble to join in the chanting and gets swept up in a kirtan, there's something there. There's something genuine there. You can feel it. And so if you're intelligent, you'll investigate it, you'll read the books, learn some of the philosophy as why that is. And then you'll engage in the process of trying to come up to the steady platform so you can feel it. It's not all or nothing. Yes, Raganuga is, at every moment you're tasting that, and there's no question of sense gratification. Yadabadi mamacheta, the Yamanujacharyas, So there's that we can aspire for. But before that, Krishna gives us almost dollops of, bliss. And you can see, I saw, Prabhu, there was a wonderful video. They said it was a rare video. It had just been rediscovered or something, of the Ukraine devotees at one of these festivals. I don't know if you know, you'd have a September festival every year for many years. And there were so many devotees. And there was Westerners, had come. There was Hari Sari in the pink of health. He'd been ill last year. So obviously it was an old one. It was at least 20 years old. There were no wireless mics. Everyone had a wire, on the mic. But it was just, you could see the joy in all the devotees, from the experience of that festival, and that it was. I was enjoying it, just watching it. This is. So there are times when, and it can go on for some time, a whole retreat. It can be like a week. I remember I used to go on these japa retreats. They had japa retreats right here up in Joshua Tree. They had this resort area there. And it was just wonderful. A whole day you're thinking about the holy name. There were nice seminars, and then you're chanting. One day we chanted 64 rounds. It may take 6 hours, whatever it is, but you're still chanting, getting through. And you're experiencing a higher taste there. So it's not, that's what draws us on. It's even mentioned in the 5th chapter, 1st canto, where Narada Muni is instructing Vyasadeva in writing the Bhagavatam. This is how the Bhagavatam came. Why am I not feeling satisfied? He was thinking, and then Narada Muni came, because he knows, and explained, you haven't sufficiently exalted and glorified Krishna and Krishna's name and Krishna's service and everything, Even though you wrote all these other Puranas and the Mahabharata. So one of the verses there describes how even if one falls away from the process, you're not as an ordinary person anymore, because you can do nothing but remember those times when you were tasting the service of Mukunda's lotus feet. In other words, that stays with you. That's why it's said Nehaba Krimanashasti. There's no loss or diminution. So we're all going back to Godhead. It's just a question of how fast we want to surrender. So the pleasure is there depending on our level of absorption and surrender at every moment. And in our sadhana state, we have some moments of that, where there's a lot of absorption and a lot of surrender, and you taste the nectar. But then, because we're conditioned still, we may, step back from that platform, and there's not as much. So that's how it is. It's the same source, All right, let's go on. Text 7. Yes, now this is the alternative, rather than be a pretender. Yas tvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta sabhishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show-bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So Prabhupada, this is echoing something his spiritual master said, Bhaktisiddhanta. Better to be a sincere sweeper in the street chanting Hare Krishna, than to be a false pretender. So Prabhupada, Svartagati, this was one of his favorite verses. This is a verse by Prahlad Maharaj, one of his teachings to his father. And he says, Nate badu svartikati hi Vishnu, durashayaye bhiratamanana, adanta gobe vishatam tamisram punak punascharvita charvanana. So the previous verse describes the person who, Matavina Krishna, but he's describing his father. He says, one who's taken a vow, who's fully determined to try to enjoy material life, materialistic household life, he told it. Then such a person's senses are out of control. Adanta gobi vishatam tamishram, and he enters further into darkness. And what is the content of his life? Punak punash charvita charvananam, chewing that which has already been chewed, trying to enjoy this material pleasure more and more and more until you're not unable to enjoy it, like that, life after life. So for such persons, they don't know that the svartagati is an important concept. It means the goal of the soul. It's easy to remember. Not just of the body and the mind, but our real eternal goal. They don't know that their goal is Vishnu. Svartagati Vishnu. And therefore, durashaya, here's that word asha again, aspiring, trying, hoping. To hope against hope. Durashaya means a hope that can never be fulfilled. Material happiness can never be fulfilled. You may think you reach the goal, but then time passes. You change. The goal is taken from you, or you're not interested anymore, or you can't hold it. Durashaya bahir artamanina. The mind is absorbed in external goals rather than internal, the spiritual goal of reconnecting with Krishna. And what's the result? Andar yatandar. Then you're instructed, you're taught by other people in that same situation. It's called the blind leading the blind. The teachers that you have, grade school, high school, college, or anything, they don't know anything about this. So they're teaching you their subject, which is but it's covering your real knowledge. It's not really helping you. So andaya tandaya, and everyone remains tightly bound up by the modes of nature and everything. So what's the solution to this? Now this one is not so often chanted or quoted by Prabhupada, but he quotes it. Naishamatistava rudukumangrim sprishatyanata bhagamo yararta. In order to touch, and for your mind to touch and become absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna, you have to, it says, take a bath in the lotus foot dust of the pure devotee. In other words, you have to find a realized soul and come under his instruction, under protection and surrender. Then you can start placing your mind on Krishna. And that's what Prabhupada gave. He gave his association, he gave his books, he gave his, an opportunity to give up our attempts to find happiness on our own and by our own material means, and to really surrender and to take up the process of devotional service. All right, let's see if we can do another one. Niyatam kudakarmatvam karmat jayo yakarmanaha shadira yatra pichate na prasiddhye yakarmanaha. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Purport. There are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously, without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. So, the idea is that one has to be patient. That's one of the principles. Utsahan nishtayad dharyat tat karma pavartanat. It's all been said by Rupa Goswami, is Upadeshamrita, the nectar of instruction. That these are the principles for advancement in devotional service. Enthusiasm. Now, it's a peculiar fact that, you can be in the kirtan. I remember back in Brooklyn, before we moved, I was a senior devotee. I'd been in the movement for a year and a half. And so they put me, I was supposed to advise the bhaktas about something. So I'm standing next to one bhakta. He's in the kirtan. And I'm doing my little thing. In those days, I could actually jump up and down. I like to dance. Now my ankles are this bad. And so I was dancing, and I looked next to him, and he wasn't dancing. He wasn't doing this, but he was just standing there. And they said, Bhakta Ted, if you start dancing, then Krishna will give the impetus, and you'll want to dance. Before you know it, you'll do it spontaneously, So he tried it, and later on he became an initiating guru in Krishna consciousness, sannyasi and everything. I'm not going to take credit for that. But the idea is that utsaha, that enthusiasm is essential. And sometimes you may not be spontaneously enthusiastic, but if you act enthusiastic, Krishna will make you enthusiastic. This is how it works. But still, even though enthusiastic, we have to be patient and determined, because we've been conditioned for a very, very long time. But this means we need faith that the process will work. And this is why the association of devotees is so important. Because you can see, well, this person wasn't really much different from me. A few years ago, he was in school, or he was working, or he was doing something. And now look, the transformation takes place. So if he can do it, or she can do it, I can do it. Right? It's not some, So that's an important faith in that Krishna can empower you to perform this. It may seem impossible, right? So therefore, the patience, enthusiasm, and determination. In relation to what? Tat karma pavartanat. All of the practices that go into making bhakti yoga. The do's and the don'ts. This is where we need to have enthusiasm, patience, determination. Sangha tyagat. Giving up the association of non-devotees. Minimizing it to the max. Does that make any sense? In other words, you understand what I mean. And sato vritte, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These are 6 principles. And then when you match them up with the don'ts, no overeating, no over-collecting, no aspiring so hard for material things, minimizing material talk as little as possible, prajalpo. And then niyamagraha is important. Niyamagraha means not following the rules and regulations, or following them in name only, kind of just showing up, like what is called mailing it in. You're not really there, you don't really care. You're not going to stay on that platform very long. But that's the 2 sides of niyamagraha. One is actually not doing the thing that you're supposed to do, or doing things you're not supposed to do. And the other is apparently doing it, but you're not really into it. you know. Janasanga, this one appears in both. This is the things that break or destroy a devotion. Association with non-devotees, that's the most poisonous. And laulium, greed for material things. So we have to be careful of those things. Okay. All right, I want to, we'll read this one, but I'm going to begin with this one tomorrow also. The next one is so important. It's kind of a key verse. Yagyartat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Now, you may get angry at me, but this translation doesn't express exactly what Prabhupada has in mind. It's just instead of work done as a sacrifice has to be performed, it should say work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. I don't know if you see the difference there. Work as a sacrifice has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. So visualize this family. It could be a nice Vaishnav family, but the father, they're working, doing it. So once a week, he takes the whole family to the temple and they do things. Even the kids are there doing the sweeping, and the father is cooking, and the mother is cooking, and the father is helping the kids clean, like that. They're performing sacrifice for Vishnu. So work as a sacrifice has to be performed. Okay, we perform work as a sacrifice for Vishnu once a week. That's what it says. You understand? Try to understand. But no, the subject should be work, not work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Work has to be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, otherwise work by, and it's very clear. Look at the beginning of the second paragraph. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world be cause of bondage. It's crystal clear there. So I don't know if you're picking up on it. This is an editorial thing. It probably, the thing is, we know what it means, Those who have read this before know absolutely what it means. And after a little while, you read it in the purport and even in so it may not be essential to change, but that's what's meant here. Work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, work causes bondage to this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Purport. Since one has to work, even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin, Yajna by Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore a performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashramachatapata Purushena Parakpaman Vishnu Aradite. Vishnu Purana 388. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this world will be a cause of bondage. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently, under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So we're not going to have time to go into this in detail. We'll discuss it tomorrow more. But this is how karma yoga kind of merges into bhakti yoga, because if your every breath, your every activity is a sacrifice for Vishnu, you're in Krishna consciousness. There's a verse that in the 11th canto that reminds me, Kayena bacha manasendriyabha buddhyatmana bhanusata subhavat kadodi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayetat. I don't know if you're familiar with that verse. But here is very specific. Everything you do with your body, with your voice, with your mind, with your senses, with your intelligence, everything you've got. Karoti yad yat sakalam parasmai. Do it with the attitude, this is a sacrifice for Narayan. I'm doing this for Narayan. Now, if you actually can live like that, you're in pure Krishna consciousness. Every breath, everything you're doing. And this is what we saw with Srila Prabhupada. We answered the phone. He's answering for Krishna. It's Krishna's business that he's going to do on that phone. He may be signing a check. He may be, whatever he's doing. Even the physical things we need to do to maintain the body. Of course, eating, offering, and that whole, process of how you can eat as a sacrament. So that's how you can live in this way. And it's always a sacrifice. And you're not incurring any karma. You're burning off any old karma. And you're connected to Krishna. So in that way, karma yoga is, in its purest form, is not different from bhakti yoga. All right, so we'll discuss this tomorrow. It's getting late. But before we leave, I'll give you one shloka. Oh, this is the one. Just think of Giridhari's beautiful smiling face. Smita ducha makadanda syandi vaktrara vindam. Tavapada padahangsan vishtagandham mukunda. Vidasita pashapali netra saranga rangam. Mamadidiyatadage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus, which does ere their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. Oh, my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.